Hi, so this video is going to look at TEEL, and it's going to look at how you can use TEEL in order to write a well-structured, well-organized, and well-developed essay. Hopefully by the end of this PowerPoint, by the end of this video, you should have learned how to use TEEL, and you should have a fairly good idea about how you can use it to structure your essay. Please, if you do have any questions or you're still stuck, send me an email or find me at school so you can ask questions about this. This is probably the most significant and the most important part of analytical essay writing. The first question that we want to ask ourselves, what do our body paragraphs need to do? And to do that, we're going to have a look at the Section A assessment criteria from the VCE exam. And you'll see here that this assessment criteria looks at four things. It looks at your knowledge and understanding of the text and the ideas and values you explore, I guess, from that text. It's going to look at your development of a coherent analysis in response to the topic. It's going to look at your use of textual evidence to support your interpretation. And it's also going to look at your control and effective use of language. Now, we want to be able to use our body paragraphs to address all of these criteria. This is essentially why we're using TEEL. When we're writing our body paragraphs, it's going to help us to do the following. It's going to help us to demonstrate our knowledge and understanding of the text. It's going to help you to relate your discussion to the prompt. It's going to help you to develop a structured and coherent interpretation of the text. And it's going to help you to analyze quotes and literary devices to support your intention. Now, we use TEEL to provide us with a way to do this. It allows us to present a structured response to the prompt, analyzes quotes from the text in support of an interpretation. And each of the individual steps enables us to do this effectively. So we use our topic sentences to demonstrate our knowledge and understanding of the text, to just establish that interpretation, and also to make those connections to the prompt. In our explanation and our evidence sections, we're going to be analysing quotes and literary devices. We're also going to be developing that structure and that coherent interpretation of the text. And we're also going to be making those frequent connections back to the prompt. What I want to do now is go over exactly how you do that in each of the different sections of TEEL. Now, when we look at TEEL, and in the past, you may have only seen TEEL with two E's. The only difference I've made here is the first E, which is elaboration. There's no real difference for you what that actually means. I just like to put it in there because it's encouraging you to explain your topic sentences and provide a little bit of a transition into your evidence before you're just jumping straight in there. So for the purposes of you, it's no change here. You probably have been doing this anyway, but it's just to provide that reminder. So with that being said, the TEEL structure overview, like we've been doing from year 8, nothing's really changed here. We have the T for topic sentence. Like I said, we have an E for elaboration. We have an E for evidence, which takes the forms of quotes and literary devices. We then E for explanation, where we explain our evidence. And then the last thing we do is just provide a link back to the prompt or to the contention. So we'll start off by looking at the topic sentences. Topic sentences is the real start of your body paragraphs, and it states the main point being made in the paragraph. It really should provide an overview of everything that you're going to comment on. And as such, it's important that it's concise and it's really direct and to the point. It should link to the author so it doesn't come across as your opinion. So you're not really supposed to speak about what you think. You're really trying to think about what the author thinks. You need to use language that hints that that's what you're doing. Our sentence starters here are going to help you to do that. You need to make sure that your topic sentence is an idea that stems from your contention. because your body paragraphs are really, the purpose of them is to support your contention. To say, introduction, this is what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to argue that in this case, Jordan is contending, and I'm going to use my body paragraphs to do that. You need to make sure that your topic sentence clearly indicates what you will discuss in your body paragraph. And this should be one of the discussion points from your introduction. Okay, those discussion points are the last 3 arguments that you're stating. You should really avoid character-based topic sentences. So a topic sentence that says the character of Kit has to deal with conflict and it helps him grow as a person. The problem with that is that it's too specific and it's not enabling you to explore the entire text. You're only exploring Kit. Focus primarily on the themes these characters are utilized to explore big ideas, so you can bring in different characters to populate and explore that idea and that theme. And lastly, avoid describing a specific event for the same reason above, but also because there's a tendency that if you're describing events, you're going to be falling into summary over analysis. So some simple sentence starters that we could use for our topic sentences are things like Jordan suggests that, Jordan examines, Jordan explores, and Jordan is critical of. Now, again, these sentence starters should not be completely new to you. This is something that we've been doing for a few years now. If you'd like me to go over these again, please come and speak to me. I'm happy to sit down with you at lunchtime, at recess, or after school. So the way that we structure our topic sentences is going to help us to achieve these aims. That is, ensuring that we are including the author's intention and their opinion. We're going to be making links to the prompt, and also that we're outlining our ideas, so our key message. You can do this by including 3 things. You usually want to start the sentence by mentioning the author and outlining that this is their suggestion. And that comes back to our sentence starters from before. Just something as simple as Jordan examines. The middle part is going to be your link to the prompt, and you're drawing a connection to the prompt by mentioning a single key word. So if the prompt is about love, you mention the word love. So it could be Jordan suggests that love, and then you outline your key message. And this is a key message or an idea that the author is making about the prompt. It's something that you've already established in your introduction. So it could be that love helps the characters develop a sense of identity. In that case, your topic sentence would sound like Jordan suggests, that's the author's intention. Your link to the prompt would be that love, and the key message is the idea about love, that is that it helps characters draw a sense of identity. So altogether that would be Jordan suggests that love helps characters draw a sense of identity. This structure is not supposed to be something that is hard and fast. It's something that is flexible, but using this structure can really help you to put your topics together, because you're just making sure that you've got those key elements. You're mentioning the author, you're making a link back to the prompt, and then you're outlining an idea with reference to the keyword and the prompt itself. So some examples here. Now note that we have these color-coded in grey, yellow, and blue. So our first prompt is discuss how Tony Jordan examines the importance of family connection in the text. And a good example of a topic sentence would be, Jordan presents the notion. Take note that we've used one of our classic sentence starters here. So Jordan presents the notion that family is a source for people to center and find themselves. So the link to the prompt are the words that family, and the key message is that family is a source for people to center and find themselves. So in this case, Jordan presents the notion that family is a source for people to center and find themselves. The second topic sentence here is on the prompt of Kip's search for approval leads him to find self-worth. Discuss. And we have this color-coded. Jordan suggests that Kip's responsibility for his daughters replicate the relationships he sought as a child. So in this case, the connection to the prompt is that approval, that responsibility for his daughters. And we're saying that the key message here, the key idea that's being connected to his approval is him replicating the relationships he thought as a child. The third topic sentence is in relation to the prompt, how does Jordan demonstrate? So how does Jordan demonstrate how life in the 30s and 40s was much harder than the 21st century? In this case, this is a how question, so you need to explain how exactly Jordan is generating those ideas. So essentially, what literary devices is she using? So in this case, we're using through the incorporation of symbols, Jordan juxtaposes. In this case, the author's intention is a little bit extended because not only is Jordan juxtaposing, but she's using the incorporation of the symbols. So her intention is to use the incorporation of symbols to juxtapose something, and that's really our idea. In this case, the link to the prompt is the gender expectations faced by Connie and Charlotte in two very different social eras. In this case, Connie in the 30s and 40s compared to Charlotte in the 21st century. And then we have our key message. This juxtaposition of Connie and Charlotte in two very different eras demonstrates how family dynamics and the role of women have changed in current society. So you can see in each of these examples, we have that author's intention, we have that link to the prompt, and we have that key message. Clearly, the third one's a little bit more sophisticated. There's a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more depth. But you don't have to do that. You can just fall back to those first two if you feel more comfortable with those. And of course, if you want to lift your mark up a bit, that's the way that you get there. You draw a little bit more sophistication. You change the structure up a little bit. So, like I said, elaboration in TEEL, which in this case is the first E, might not be something that you've seen before, but I do like to put it in there because I think that it provides a really handy reminder that sometimes you do need to explain your topic sentence a little bit more in order and before you get into your evidence. And this is often so that you can really just explain that idea, explain exactly what you mean. The elaborate section enables you to expand in your topic sentence, elaborate what you mean. It should be 1 to 2 sentences and directly expand what you mean in the topic sentence, and it should transition into your evidence and potentially provide some context. That transition exists in that context. You're actually providing the background behind how your idea connects into your evidence. And here we have just an example of how you could elaborate on your topic sentence from one of our examples here. We have our topic sentence. Jordan presents the notion that family is a source of people to center and find themselves. Family provides the potential for individuals to develop a sense of who they are within a comforting and safe environment. So it's essentially just explaining exactly how and why people are able to center and find themselves due to their family. In this case, it's because they are able to do so within a comforting and safe environment. And this would provide a little bit of a transition between your idea and essentially the quotes and the textual evidence that you're going to use to support that idea. Essentially, you'd be using quotes that demonstrate that safe environment, that demonstrate that comfort, and that show how the characters are able to develop a sense of who they are. So really, the elaboration is just explaining it in a little bit more detail and just providing that little bit of a link, that little bit of a transition into your evidence. Your evidence is the inclusion of quotes in the text to support your analysis of the use of language and structure to make a certain point. This will often be also through the use of meta language, such as the use of different literary devices, symbolism, narrative structures such as narrative voice. A good example of this would be in 9 Days. Each of the characters narrates a different part of the story, a different chapter of the story, and that provides a very different voice. Each of the chapters is from a different character, is from their perspective. We could use that as a narrative device, as a literary device to help us explore perspective or to explore family. Because essentially that narrative voice is showing that all of these characters play a role in the development of that family. So remember, aim to do 2 different types of evidence per argument. Ensure you are choosing evidence that supports your idea. Your quote should be short and sharp. Be specific. Avoid writing about the style of writing in a broad sense. Speak about which language and literary devices work together to create that style. Use motifs and symbols. Symbols are specific images that represent a big idea. These are generally used once or twice, whereas motifs consistently repeat throughout the text. And like I said, structural elements such as narrative voice can also be quite useful. Evidence must be used as proof of your argument. You're essentially trying to show and provide proof that your arguments, that's your topic sentence, your contention, is supported by the text. It should be brief. It should be not the main substance of your paragraph. You don't want to have 15, 20 word quotes. You want to keep them nice and short, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. The reason you do this is because it makes it more digestible for you to analyze. Because once you introduce your evidence, you don't have to analyze it. And it's easy to analyze for 3 or 4 words as opposed to 15. These quotes or this evidence should be embedded. That's why you also want to make sure that you're only including the important aspects of dialogue, the important 3 or 4 words, rather than the entire conversation. They should be surrounded by inverse commas. While you can incorporate descriptive evidence, make sure to remember and utilize exact wording from the text in inverted commas. It should also be specific. This generally means that you include identifiable quotes rather than single words that appear at some point. So don't go around quoting and or about, because it's just not substantial enough to be supporting your essay. I would also comment that using quotes that help you describe something is also probably not something that you want to do. Unless it's there to actually support your argument, it's really just there. And this is not the worst thing in the world. It's really just there to help you be descriptive, which is not exactly what you want to do. You want to be analytical. This is a list of the big 10 quotes. These are 10 quotes that you should not necessarily memorize, but you should be using frequently. And at the very least, you have in the back of your mind to be able to use whenever you're stuck, whenever you've got an essay that you need to, or an idea that you need to come up with. This is a good list of quotes because they're quite flexible. So an example is, my father planted these bulbs. The bulbs can relate to the idea of family. They can relate to the idea of the past, relate to the idea of trauma and grief, because those bulbs are representative of that grief that's now growing and now is leading to something that's positive. So there's all these different things that symbol and that idea of it blooming later enables you to explore. So my suggestion would be to have just a look at a look at those, write them down in your book, write down the important parts, however you would like to use them. This is a really good quote bank and a really good list of quotes that you can use. Then we move on to the explain section. The explain section is where you explain why your evidence supports your discussion. You're essentially saying, Jordan has used this quote, and this is what the meaning of that quote is. You're essentially describing how the meaning is established by the quotes or the literary devices. You need to make sure that you're making reference back to the idea in the topic sentence. Because if you're not doing that, then you're probably establishing a new idea rather than using that evidence to support your topic sentence, which is the purpose of your evidence. You're supporting the topic sentence. When you're explaining your evidence, you're analysing how the literary devices create meaning. So how do they actually create that meaning? You're also, that could be explaining what the actual meaning is to the idea from the evidence and why the meaning is important. That's how the literary devices create meaning, what the actual meaning is, and why the meaning is important. And that third why the meaning is important, that's your evaluation. That's how you connect it into the real world. It's important because it critiques gender roles. Tony Jordan is critiquing gender roles within society. That is something that doesn't just occur within the text, but it also occurs within the real world. And that is the why section. And it's something that is that next level of analysis. It's actually called evaluation. So essentially that is the what, how, and why structure. These are essentially ways that you can approach your analysis to help you develop additional layers of sophistication. So rather than just explaining what the author is doing, this is really important, you're also explaining how the author is doing it. How does the writer tell us using language and structures? How do the words and phrases help to show us this? How does a symbol actually create the meaning for us? How does the word, a particular word, help us to understand a character, or help us to understand a theme, or help us to understand a particular meaning that she's trying to convey? Essentially, how do they use this technique, this language, this symbol, this device, whatever, to create meaning? And lastly, why is the author doing this? Why is the writer telling us this? Why is this important for us as readers? So my examples here are in relation to one of the quotes from the previous slide, and that is, berries leave stains that are a bugger to get out. Really good quote, flexible. So the what is that this quote helps to explore the impact that social traditions can have. In this case, that impact is negative. So it helps to explore the negative impact that social traditions have. So how does this symbol do that? Well, the how is that a stain is a bad thing. A stain sticks with you. A stain is impossible to get out. So in this case, the berries and the stain are a symbol of the idea that social norms stain the desires and hopes of the individual. They prevent individuals from moving forward because they are stained. And they have this reminder, this evidence that's sticking with them. So the what is, it helps us to explore the negative impact that social traditions have. Or it helps Jordan, actually. The how is that the berries are a symbol and they represent that stain of the desires and hopes of the individual that is holding us back and that's providing that reminder. The why is Jordan wanting to convey this idea? Why is Jordan wanting to convey the idea that individuals have their lives stained by social norms? Well, she does this in order to critique social conventions. She's essentially saying social conventions are bad, and that is a criticism So Jordan uses a symbol to criticize social conventions by showing the reader the power of societal norms and the impact they can have on the identity and confidence on the individual, because they stain the desires and hopes of the individual. They prevent them from moving forward. They hold them back. And that's how the what, the how, and the why works. And when you do your explain, you really have to do the what and the how. You really have to explain what the evidence is saying. And you really should be explaining how the author is doing that or how the evidence is doing that. Now, the why is just taking it that next level. It's really making sure that you're being more sophisticated and you're taking your essays or your body paragraphs from kind of the mid-range up into the higher and the mid-high range. So that's what that next leap is. That's how you're challenging yourself. You're not just explaining how the symbols create meaning, but you're explaining why that meaning is important. Essentially, why it links into us as a society. So after we've moved on from our evidence and our explanation, which we will have done 2 or 3 times, we then finish with a linking sentence. Bear in mind here that we've had our topic sentence, we've elaborated on that topic sentence. Well, we have introduced some evidence, we've explained that evidence, we've introduced another piece of evidence, we've explained that evidence. Potentially, we've introduced another piece of evidence and then we've explained that third piece of evidence. You don't have to do that. If your analysis is a little bit more in depth, you probably only need to do it twice. But I would suggest that you do it twice because it's showing how multiple pieces of evidence intersect with each other. Again, that's going to help you to response. It's going to help you to be more sophisticated, help you get higher marks, and interaction between the two. We then move into our linking sentence, linking back the contention, back to the topic sentence. A linking sentence ties the argument back to your contention, so the connection is clear and your argument is cohesive. It's not just ending abruptly, there's actually some well-rounded nature to it. You should also specify the authorial intent so it doesn't come across as opinion, just like in your topic sentence. So points to remember, you shouldn't be introducing new ideas at this stage. The idea should well and truly have been discussed and have been done at this stage. Always be linking back to the prompt and the topic, but not with a new idea. It should be essentially providing a connection back to what you've said, back to the prompt. Summarize your point in relation to the prompt. What is the key takeaway? Return to the big idea. While you may mention specific examples, within the context of the theme, the dynamic, or the idea originally stated. And you should also be succinct. It doesn't need to go for 2 or 3 sentences. It really should just be a linking sentence, linking sentences. So what does an example of a linking sentence look like? Well, again, we have this color-coded system where we have the author's intention, which again is usually distilled or in a few words. It just really introduces the character and what their intention is. The middle part of the sentence is going to be our link to the prompt. That's where we really ground it in the idea and the prompt that we had. And the last one is the key takeaway, the message that you're attempting to convey in the body paragraph. And it would sound something like this. So if the prompt is about discuss how Tony Jordan examines the importance of family connection in the text, your linking sentence might sound something like Jordan alludes to how people rely on family to center themselves in an ever-changing society. Kip's search for approval leads him to found self-worth. Therefore, again, a really useful connecting word. What it demonstrates that Kip's responsibility for his daughters is characterizing the text to demonstrate how an individual's own upbringing heavily influences their decision regarding their own children. This sounds a little bit like a topic sentence, but is actually a little bit different because rather than introducing the topic, providing more of an overview or providing more of this is what I've said so far. And then lastly, with the prompt to do with 30s and 40s and how it was much harder in the 21st century, it is through these symbols that Jordan parallels the gender expectations faced by Connie and Charlotte in two very different social eras in order to demonstrate how family dynamics and the role of women have changed in current society. Remember that this prompt is about how. How does Jordan do it? So there's the inclusion here of symbols. So from here, we've actually finished our body paragraph. We've had our topic sentences. We've elaborated on those topic sentences, evidence, and we've used analysis or an explanation to support that topic sentence multiple times, and then we've finished it off with a linking sentence. And that's really our topic sentence. That's really our entire body paragraph. This is a sample that I've got here. Jordan outlines that the reason characters submit to social standards is to fundamentally avoid the negative implications eventuated by not complying to such norms. Connie is pressurized by Jean to abort her child in order to avoid dragging the entire family down to the bottom of the hill of Rwanda Parade. Here, Jordan figuratively underscores how Connie's unmarried pregnancy will lower the family strata on their constructed decision to protect her family's name. Jordan couples this with Jean's encounter with the dress shop attendant, where she describes the place where the madam used to be is like a kick in the guts. Here, Jean's discomfort and unease at not being regarded as a madam reveals how she greatly values her community reputation. Jordan typifies how Jean's compliance with social expectations is overtly driven by her desire to be perceived as a respectable figure in Richmond community. Additionally, Stanzi feels as though she has huge legs atop bulbous feet after being shamed for her overweight nature. Via this utilization of imagery, Jordan sheds light on how Stanzi, subjugated to modern sexist ideals, catalyzes Stanzi's change in lifestyle, where she conforms to the stereotypes of women having a perfect body image. Ultimately, Jordan unveils how members of the Westaway family succumb to social paradigms to escape from negative situations that they are forced to confront. Take note here that in this body paragraph, and I have color-coded it, you'll notice that there's three pieces of evidence. Purple, green, purple, green, purple, green. It could potentially be, have that evidence explained in a little bit more detail. If you were to do that, you might want to just take out one of the pieces of evidence, maybe the second piece, and use Stasi to compare against Connie. But that's completely up to you. Also, take note that there is no elaboration here, that we just transition straight from the topic sentence into the first quote. And take note that that isn't a seamless transition. It is a little bit abrupt. So some general tips. And to finish up, do not use contractions such as where or it's. Attempts to replace these with we are or it is respectively. Avoid using personal perspective. Instead, refer to the reader. So rather than I believe, you're saying the reader believes, or the reader perceives, rather than I perceive that. This establishes authorial intent while also circumventing opinion. You don't want to make it seem like this is your opinion. You want to make it sound like it is the author's opinion that you are identifying. Be specific. It is always better to specify which themes, characters, devices, or events you are discussing than to write unspecific words such as things and people, or the hyponym themes and visual devices. So when we talk about specify, rather than saying it relates to particular themes, you're specific about which theme is it being explored. And as I spoke about in a previous lesson, if you're saying the theme of love, for example, you probably want to identify exactly what sub-theme of love is being discussed rather than being that general. Lastly, remember you're creating an analytical piece, so the majority of your essay should surround that focus. Try to avoid summarizing. The narrative or assessing how well the author achieves their intent. You really should be predominantly establishing an argument. This occurs in the topic sentence and the elaboration, exploring and supporting that idea through the evidence and the explanation, and then making sure that it's nice and well structured with a link, a little cherry on top. So through this PowerPoint and through this presentation, this video, you should have learned how TEEL works. You should have learned the different steps of TEEL and how to put a body paragraph together using TEEL. Please, if you haven't grasped at this stage, send me an email, come and speak to me in the yard, because I would really be happy, more than happy, to sit down with you and explain this further. Thank you.